As the world around us continues to change, Florida Blue remains focused on our commitment to help keep Florida at its healthiest. With Medicare Advantage HMO plans that received Medicare's highest rating, 5 out of 5 stars. And you can switch today. No need to wait for the annual enrollment period. So call or visit online now. It starts with the benefit of $0 monthly plan premiums. But staying healthy is now more important than ever. So Florida Blue Medicare's 5 stars go even further. With enhanced benefits like $0 outpatient mental health services, $0 primary care telehealth available 24/7, 90-day prescription supply by mail, and free support from neighborhood nurses. All part of our 5-star commitment to you. So call 866-308-6110 and get the 5-star rated Medicare HMO plan that's right for you. Our experts are standing by. Call and switch today.
Excellent. Well, everyone, we're very excited about our guests for the May segment of the Blue Seat, again, sponsored by Florida Blue. In case you do not recognize the gentleman on the screen, we have no other introductions necessary, but Ron Sachs with Sachs Media. We could not think of a better guest to bring to the Blue Seat to discuss this incredible subject matter. And again, just in case you weren't aware, Ron Sachs has been around for a little bit here. So he's the founder and CEO of Sachs Media, has probably a couple of different name iterations that Sachs Media has evolved into, but amazing company that's right in our own backyard in Tallahassee. But our subject matter this month is how to manage a crisis like a pro. And again, we couldn't think of a better person to bring to the Blue Seat to help give us some tips and pointers of how to manage a crisis like a pro. And just so you'll know, a couple of background things about Ron. He's definitely worked with a number of governors in our great state of Florida. He's a graduate of the University of Florida College of Journalism, where he's also, yes, see, I said that really quick, Ron, real quick, University of Florida graduate. But you also have some great ties and connections with South Florida as well, too, Ron, which I think a number of people just know that you have had your hands and feel across the entire state of Florida. So welcome, Ron Sachs, to the Blue Seat.
Very nice to be on the Blue Seat. Blue happens to be my favorite color. In fact, I like it so much, I think they should have given it 2 syllables. It should be blue.
Blue. I like that. And thanks for dressing for the occasion as well, Ron. We appreciate that.
Inappropriate.
Thank you for that. So crisis planning, crisis management is not everyone's favorite subject, but wow, if you find yourself in that situation, Ron, what do you do?
Well, first off, let me just say it's a privilege and a pleasure to be with you on this important program. And I have such a lot of respect and reservoir of goodwill for the nonprofits in our community. I'm very proud of what we do to help nonprofits, clients, and also pro bono work we do a lot of. But I would say to you, if you wait until you're in a crisis to start thinking about them, that is the crisis after the crisis. You need to crisis plan in advance. Now, no one in the corporate world, the nonprofit world, or the public sector wants a crisis to befall them organizationally or by some key individual that could taint the brand of the whole organization. But the crisis before the crisis is failure to plan for one. The crisis after the crisis is mishandling it, botching it, making mistakes in how you respond. So I can unpack that, with you for a few minutes, or just answer your questions, whatever you prefer.
Well, let's start off with the wrong way to respond to a crisis, Ron. Let's start with that one.
Okay, well, the wrong way is to not plan for one, all right? The wrong way is when a crisis happens to not have a protocol in place of how to handle it, how to handle media queries, how to communicate with various audiences, employees, customers or clients, the public, the media. The media are a megaphone to all of the audiences, but they're also an audience of their own making. So being slow to respond, not updating information. Now, one of the problems in a crisis situation is very often, whether it's a nonprofit or a government agency or a business, lawyers, God bless them, are going to be involved. And lawyers in a crisis worried that there'll maybe charges filed or an investigation or that someone's going to sue, very often my lawyer friends, many of them will counsel a client, say nothing, all right? Say nothing. So in a court of law, we all know in our wonderful system of jurisprudence, you have a presumption of innocence. They have to prove you did something wrong. But I don't work there. I work in the court of public opinion, and crises in their early moments, hours, days, are played out in the court of public opinion. And if you say nothing on your own behalf in the court of public opinion, people will say, oh my God, they didn't respond to questions. They didn't return calls. They said no comment. Well, in the court of public opinion, if that's the response, no response or no comment, people, many people, understandably will assume it must be true. They must have done something wrong. He or she must have done something wrong. They're hiding. They're afraid to come out and be above board. So we politely butt heads with attorneys when we share a client that's in a crisis. And we counsel that while there are few absolutes in life, almost absolutely, you always have to speak up on your own behalf, even if the crisis involves stolen money, something that cost too much, something that got damaged, people who got hurt, people who got killed. I mean, that's the nature of crisis. It could be physical, all right, something got hurt, something got damaged, someone got killed, or fiscal, money's missing, something cost too much, somebody did something dishonest. You have to prepare for all of those and be prepared to talk to, again, multiple audiences, including the media, and to regularly update your facts. And by the way, the other way to compound a crisis is not to tell the truth, okay? So never lie. I mean, you think you're talking to a child when you say that, but I've talked to people in a crisis who have been clients. I'm not gonna tell you who, some public officials, some corporate executives. Do we have to tell the truth? Absolutely. Assume the truth is gonna come out. But if we put our own story out with the facts and the truth, we have a better opportunity to shape the truth, not some misrepresented truth, but the real truth, okay? So I'll just tell you one last thing. It's always good to break your own bad news, okay? There may be crises that the public doesn't know about yet, and that's when lawyers sometimes say, let's just sit on this. I'm an advocate generally for let's get our own bad news out there. It'll show a certain amount of candor and courage to say, hey, something bad happened. We discovered it. Here's what we think happened. We reached out to authorities. We're cooperating with the investigation. This bad guy, we're suspending him, all right? In other words, we have to show we've taken action steps. We're fully cooperating. We're looking to put in new protocols to prevent this kind of thing from ever happening again. That's just a really fire hosing of the elements that need to be in a holding statement, a statement that serves you for a period of time. That period of time may be a day, it may be a few hours, but you can't just do it once and go away.
So how do you identify who's the best person from your organization to tackle the crisis?
Well, first of all, it shouldn't be a person. And in fact, planning for a crisis means who should be in the room, whether it's a real room or a virtual room, who should be in the room to be part of the crisis team. So it could be a risk manager if there's an organization with a risk manager, someone in charge of HR. There's got to be a C-suite executive. There's got to be somebody who's comfortable being the spokesperson, maybe one or two. But let me picture a funnel, all right? Lots of requests for information may come in the wide mouth of the funnel, but out of the narrow end, we have to have a controlled message. Again, facts and truth, but we have to make sure someone doesn't look like a deer in the headlights when they're being interviewed, So over the years, I've collected some terrible things people have said when they're the spokesperson for an organization that's in a crisis. They're trying to say the right thing, but they're inept at doing it. So here's one of my favorites in my top 10 list. Well, actually, Felina, no, this is not the worst accident our company's ever had. So the media are covering some corporate industrial accident. And is it the worst you've ever had? The spokesperson is saying, no, we had a worse one a few years ago. Now the media is dredging up the old one too. Or here's another one, again, a misstatement when someone's trying to do the right thing. Fortunately, most of the victims were pretty old. So that just shows a cold insensitivity, and someone trying to put their best foot forward for the organization has shot themselves in the foot when their foot's in their mouth.
Wow. Oh, those are great examples. Ron, one of the things that I have heard before, and I don't know if it's just limited to the world of marketing but I've heard that, are all crisis bad crisis for organization? Are they all bad when you're looking at maybe awareness of a cause or a mission?
Well, first off, you know, Chicken Little, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. A
Right.
crisis can be an opportunity to educate the public about an issue or a problem. You don't want to manufacture the crisis. There are enough real ones to be prepared for. But I forget which Asian culture it is, but the symbol for crisis is something dangerous, and also it interprets as opportunity. So your question is really insightful, because a crisis is an opportunity to protect a brand, reset perception about the brand. But what you absolutely have to do is be transparent, be candid, and even when the news is bad, okay, break your own bad news. So there was a client we had years ago whose CEO had stolen, without their knowledge, over a period of 4 years, several $1,000,000 from this public health entity. I said, let me call the Miami Herald and negotiate giving them this story. All right. She had not been arrested yet. Feds are investigating. She's expected to be indicted. And my point here is she has a presumption of innocence, even though there was just strong evidence she did this, right? But did it right under their noses. They didn't catch it for 4 years. So no one was complicit in the fraud and the theft, but the controller continued to allow her to kind of order these checks to herself, and did not report it, stupidly, because he believed that the board and authorities would not believe him. So he was fired. But my advice to this client, when lawyers were saying, no, let's say nothing, was let's give this story to the Miami Herald and make them separate the alleged bad guy, bad gal, from the good guy organization. So within 8 to 10 days, the lawyers called me back and determined that that would be the right way to proceed. So I called the managing editor of the Miami Herald. I said, look, I got a big story for you. It involves an apparently dishonest executive at an important nonprofit healthcare entity. And I want you to promise me that if we help you with the details on this story, that you will separate the good guy organization that served the community for more than 40 years from the alleged bad CEO who is probably going to jail. And so that story was written with the facts and the truth, and it talked about what you want in a story like that. Something bad happened. Here's how we found out about it. We've suspended her. We reached out to authorities. She's under investigation. We're actively cooperating. And because it involved money, we're bringing in forensic experts to help us put in new safeguards to make sure it can never happen again. By the way, you want to be able to say, so it can never happen again. It might happen again 2 years from now, but you have to be able to give people that confidence in your competence that we're doing something to fix whatever problem allowed there to be such a gap in oversight that she could steal that amount of money, or any money at all.
Incredible. So Ron, that organization, did they have a crisis management plan already in place?
No, they did not.
They did not.
And many organizations do not. And, whether it's an active shooter situation, we put together a crisis plan for one of the parochial schools in town here in Tallahassee, because God forbid, these active shooter things are happening with increasing frequency. It could be a school, it could be a church, it could be a mall, it could be a public park, it could be an outdoor concert in Las Vegas, all right? It's horrible what's going on. But again, you have to be prepared. Who's in the room to help make good decisions? Who is speaking for the organization? How are we reaching out to other folks that we need to connect with? And the problem is very smart people who are CEOs, doctors, lawyers, elected officials, when it's personal, when it's their individual self or their organization, there's emotions involved, and people, when they're emotional, make bad decisions. So I'm terrific at solving your problems, in a crisis. But personally, if something was wrong with one of my kids or with my business, I'd have to really try and take the emotion out of it and make good, sound judgments. That's what we bring to the table. One story worth telling, AAU is the National Amateur Athletic Union. 500,000 boys and girls play sports in those organizations. More than 50,000 adults serve as volunteers and coaches. Well, the better part of 10 years ago, they contacted us. Their headquarters is on Walt Disney World property in Central Florida. Their longtime CEO, president, he was on medical leave for cancer, but Two middle-aged guys in their 40s alleged to ESPN that when they were teenagers back in the 80s, he had molested them in a basketball program he operated in Tennessee or Kentucky. Now, no police report was ever filed. They never complained at the time. But now one guy is on camera in a 1-hour TV special on ESPN, and one guy is shrouded, so you don't know his identity. And they are alleging in this story that the guy did this, okay? So the AAU hired us to help them through this crisis. And what we did was tell them, we hope that your CEO is not guilty, but you can't have that cloud over the organization. You can't allow him to come back to work in the building. So they severed the relationship with him. He had a pretty good, package leaving. Guess what? No charges ever were filed. No police report, even after this 1-hour ESPN story ran. We also recommended the AAU that they set up the best standards in the country for a youth adult organization for what do I as an adult have to do? I can't be alone with a kid in a car. I can't be alone with a kid in a hotel room on travel basketball or whatever sport it is. And we have set up 2 task forces and set the highest standards in the land for how adults interact. And it was to protect adults from a false accusation and to protect kids from a predator. So that's crisis management. You can't just remove the alleged bad person. You have to take actions, corrective steps as well.
So if you're getting ahead of a crisis, which of course we're just saying having the plan is what you're recommending, having a spokesperson is part of that plan, what are some of the maybe high-level critical things that you need to have in a crisis plan, Ron? Especially a lot of our nonprofits are grassroots, small operations, but some of the bare bones, meat that you need to have in a crisis plan would be what?
Well, you have to tell your story of what the problem was, how it was discovered, what you're doing about it. Because an organization with a multiple decades reputation for doing good, or a business, or a government, a local government, can have their branding like that. Let's go to the Penn State coach Sandusky, okay, who was a predator. And it appeared from all the investigations once it was revealed that the university at the highest levels was complicit in covering it up for a period of time. Or who knows how many young people might not have been molested had this guy been stopped earlier. He's in prison now. But the damage to Penn State University's brand, the Nittany Lions, right? At the time, people were calling them the Nittany Liars. Millions and millions of brand damage done. If you're an alum, you don't feel good about your alma mater. If you're a current era student or the parents of one, you feel terrible. And their program was suspended for all I think. They've come back to prominence, okay, by doing things they were compelled to do and things they chose to do. But that setback, millions of dollars of damage in real money and damage just to the brand, the resonance and relevance of the brand. And because they mishandled it early on for a prolonged period of time.
Yes, I remember that one vividly. National news on that one, Ron. So with how many years has Sachs Media been in existence?
Well, we're in our 26th year. We're celebrating a quarter century, and we're more focused on the next 25 years than the last 25 years. But I started out as a one-man band in a 600 square foot 3-room office. And now we have a staff of 32. We're headquartered here. We have folks in Orlando and South Florida. But what's interesting is with what we do, we can hit the whole world for a client from any place as long as we have the technology to support it. You don't always have to be boots on the ground, even in a non-COVID period. But I would say this COVID crisis, we've learned lots of good things in this crisis about how to run our organizations virtually. I used to think people spent so much time on devices, they were not living a virtuous life, but a virtual one. But we've learned to protect the health and safety of everyone. A virtual workplace is a virtuous one at the time being. And older people like me, if you'd have asked me 15 months ago, would you allow any of your staff or all of them to work from home for a week? I would have said no. How about 15 months? Hell no. But we have proved me to be a guy still willing to learn, that our folks, I'm sure like your members and their staffs, have worked as hard or harder than ever during this period of time, you need to remind people to take a break. So we have gone through this period of time, twin crises, okay, maybe three. The COVID, a threat to our health, the Black Lives Matter movement, which is transformative in terms of getting everybody's attention on the fact that the modern civil rights movement is about institutional racism that's deeply rooted, not just in the criminal justice system, but in lots of places. For workplaces of every kind to be talking about diversity and inclusion, this is breakthrough stuff. So also against this backdrop, we are in the sharpest political divide of my lifetime. And my lifetime includes going to college in the late 60s, early 70s, when it's the anti-war movement, the civil rights movement, the women's movement, the environmental movement, all of that. And it seemed like a divided time, but that was a cakewalk compared to what we're in right now. And the crisis that we're all sharing on three levels, how are we going to handle it? I think we're handling the pandemic well. I think the civil rights issues about equality and equity, a lot of people are rising up to do the right thing, including corporate America. As for the political divide, I think that's a crisis we're all in right now. And I have a hard time talking to my own brother, who's one of my best friends. He's 13 months older than I, and we are polar opposites politically. And we can't talk about politics without both of us getting upset. We've got to find a way back to common ground. And when you think about it, the biggest crisis that we faced on our own grounds here in the United States was 9/11, right? And the political divide then seemed to disappear. We had a shared common threat on our homeland, and people pulled together. Whatever differences there were, age, ethnicity, political party, didn't matter, all right? Our country was under attack. And it shouldn't take that kind of trauma and tragedy for us to get away from this divide where each side seems to demonize the other in name calling and villainizing a political opponent who's just a political opponent, but not an enemy. So I think that calming voices, and INI is part of that, helping nonprofits help in so many ways in our community and all across the country. But I think we're in a really rough time, and we all have a responsibility to be part of the solution with COVID, with civil rights, diversity and equity, and with this political divide. We shouldn't contribute to that. We should try and bridge the gap.
You know, Ron, I'm thinking about just your history and your experience, and you're in the business of crisis management. You're living and breathing that every day. And I'm just really curious, like, how has your perspective of the world, how has it changed over the years as you have dealt with a number of different crisis situations for organizations? Has it impacted your feedback or your perspective of humanity?
It's going to sound a little odd, but I love helping people and organizations through crisis because it's a hard thing to do, and particularly when you're involved, because it's your brand, your organization, your family, your elected official. But you know, one bad apple, okay, alleged to have done something bad, can taint the entire basket. You know, one corrupt elected official or appointed official, okay, people already have a pretty low opinion of government, and you know, a public office, elected or appointed, is a public trust. So too are attorneys and doctors and CEOs, and you know, there's a public trust in terms of what they do and the audience they connect with, their clients, their customers. And if you do something wrong, you have to fix it. You have to own up to mistakes, okay? And there's too much covering up. There's too much avoiding responsibility taking. And, you know, people can be very forgiving if there's an honest mistake, but they are very unforgiving about hiding the facts and the truth. Covering up even an honest mistake is a dishonest act, okay? So if you care about an organization, you want to fix the problem. You got to get rid of the bad actor or actresses, all right, who commit wrong. You know, a friend of mine had a trusted employee who stole a little bit of money from the company. And he said to me, I like this person so much. You know, they're asking me to give him a second chance. A couple of my other executives think we should give him another chance. And I said, I would not do that. To the most people who know that he did this thing, they're going to think you don't care enough about them being honest or about the organization, that you would keep a avowed dishonest person. And the point is, if they did it to you once, would they do it again? I got rid of an employee who lied to me in the first week on the job. And the promise was, please don't fire me. Please let me stay. And my view was this, okay? If you lie to me about a small thing, you'd lie to me about a big thing. And you're in my business office. No, I'm not keeping you. Good luck. That's it. I mean, you have to make good decisions. And you got to get the right people on the bus, if you will, in a workplace, whether it's a nonprofit, a public entity, or a corporate entity. And
Right.
we spent 25 years investing in talent, and we have a great team here. And we really enjoy helping organizations like INI and member organizations make plans, not just for crisis, but for success. But
Awesome.
you can't fear a crisis. There's a pretty good likelihood that in the lifetime of any organization, public, private, or not-for-profit, there's going to be a problem that could become public and become a very big issue for the organization's reality right now and for its future. And failure to plan for it, failure to respond properly, compounds the problem.
Mhm. Well, Ron, my last question for you, and thank you so much for that. I'm really curious as if you could speak to the importance of board member affiliations with a nonprofit organization, because they're an extension of the organization. Maybe
Yeah.
just emphasize or speak on that.
Sure. First of all, it's an honor to be asked to be on a board of an organization, but it carries a responsibility. Too many boards are populated by people who enjoy having that resume line that I'm on the board of such and such organization, but don't shoulder any burden to help the organization. People who are on the board of an organization need to be given a lift to undertake. Part of it is being a champion for the organization out in public whenever they're talking to a friend or to a client, a customer, anybody, to say, hey, do you know about, and X is the organization. Are you a member of X? They also should be given a responsibility to help in brand raising, which is what I'm talking about, and fundraising. Nonprofits work very hard. I'm going to give a sad truth to you. I love this community. I moved here from Miami intentionally in 1990 to raise my then 3 little girls in a calmer place. Parents Magazine said Tallahassee is one of the 10 best places to raise kids. And I read this article in like 1990. I threw my resume out in Tallahassee. I chose to move here to build a life here. And my 3 girls were raised here in this great community. I was able to start a business here. I was able to change my life and my family's life by coming here. And nonprofits are so essential to the health and well-being of any community. The big problem I see in the nonprofit community here is that there's a lot of logo clutter in terms of organizations working in the same space. And I'm not casting aspersions on anybody's mission, but a lot of children's advocacy organizations, a lot of cultural and arts organizations with sometimes overlapping missions. There's a limited pool of people who can cut a check to support an organization. And to me, the survival of the fittest in the nonprofit world will eventually come down to those that have the best mission, the best message, and the best messengers. And to avoid a crisis in the nonprofits world, you can never be complacent about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And the way to avoid that crisis is to make sure your mission is one that the community benefits from, that the message is understandable, and the messengers are passionate champions for the organization.
Excellent. Well said, Ron. Thank you so very much. Well, this has been phenomenal. I could keep you on here for like hours, but I know that I have to let you go. Ron, thank you so much for your time and your support of the nonprofit sector. Really appreciate what you and Gay both contribute to the community.
And I would say this, though. I think that through Ryan Cohn, my colleague, who's very connected with INI. By the way, I was going to start a counterpart organization called Audi, you know, but INI, maybe we can send a template for the basic bare bones that should be elements of a crisis plan, and your organizations can look at that and figure out how to start trying to adapt or adopt one for themselves.
Thank you, Ron. We would really appreciate that, and it's definitely needed.
Well, everybody stay safe and healthy, and God bless you all for what you do in the nonprofit world. We all benefit, but again, you better make sure your mission, message, and messengers are all sharply focused.
Yes, and think about it in advance. instead of waiting for a crisis to happen, right?
I don't wish one on any of you, okay?
Thanks, Ron.
I appreciate you. Bye-bye.